All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice questions series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Be sure to check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Selena is designing a mock classroom in her ABA clinic that she plans to use as a training environment for young clients who are preparing to go to school. Selena's priority is generalization and plans to train loosely. Which of the following examples would be the worst example of training loosely? So we have a situation where Selena is using strategies to plan for generalization, which is what we should be doing as behavior analysts. Generalization doesn't just magically happen. We don't just hope and wish that generalization would occur. We plan for generalization. There's several strategies we can use. Selena is using training loosely. Now, what does train loosely mean? When we train loosely, we start to vary non-critical aspects of the environment. And why do we do that? Well, we don't want non-critical aspects of the teaching environment to gain any stimulus control over behavior. So if we're looking for the example of the worst example of training loosely, we're likely looking for something where we're altering a critical aspect, right? Because training loosely, we want to alter non-critical aspects. And so Selena's goal is this mock classroom for school. So let's look at A. Each week, change out the posters and other items hanging in the room. Posters in the room would not likely be critical to this environment. Posters can change all the time. The decorations change all the time. Posters don't seem to be all that critical. But let's look at the rest of our answer choices because all we know so far is she could change out the posters. B, include a whiteboard instead of a chalkboard in the room since that's what is standard in classrooms these days. Now, think about this question. This question is saying classrooms have whiteboards. So whiteboards are a critical aspect of this classroom since there will be a whiteboard in the classroom. So including the whiteboard is not varying a non-critical aspect. In this case, Selena is using something that will be critical in the classroom environment. So B is much worse than A, where she's just changing posters that may or may not even be part of the environment. C, have children choose different colored dots each day to sit on during circle time. The colors of the dots are irrelevant. It's just something they're going to choose. And so she's varying which color they sit on each day. It's not as critical as this standard whiteboard that appears in the classroom. And then D, Selena should wear a different style of clothing each day. Selena's clothing is non-critical to the real school environment. It could mirror what the teacher wears. It might not. It isn't critical, but Selena's going to vary it anyway. A, C, and D involve Selena varying non-critical aspects of the environment, whereas B, she's including a critical aspect. So the worst example of training loosely would be B. You hand a blueberry to your toddler and they throw it on the ground and say, I want blackberry. You tell them to first pick up the blueberry and then they can have a blackberry. Before they pick it up, the dog eats the blueberry. You still give the blackberry to your toddler. What does this resemble? Let's think about this. We're looking at the situation and we're looking at specifically the idea that you give the blackberry to your toddler after the dog ate the blueberry that they were supposed to pick up. So what are we looking at here? Because you were going to give the blackberry to the toddler contingent on them picking up the blueberry that they threw on the ground. So in order to gain reinforcement, in order to gain the consequence, in order to gain the reinforcer, they have to engage in the behavior of picking up the blueberry. However, before they can engage in that behavior, the dog eats the blueberry. So the child has not engaged in the response, and yet you give them reinforcement anyway. What does this most resemble? A, bootleg reinforcement. This absolutely resembles bootleg reinforcement. Bootleg reinforcement occurs when reinforcement is delivered when the target response isn't displayed. So whatever response is required to gain reinforcement, it doesn't occur, that response, and yet the learner still gets reinforcement anyway. And that's what's happened here. The child still gets the blackberry, even though they didn't pick up the blueberry. B, behavior traps. This is not a behavior trap because with a behavior trap, you're trying to get them into engage in known responses and trying to get them to contact different reinforcers that are occurring as a result of the response. They didn't engage in the response that you wanted, and you still gave them reinforcement. C, non-contingent reinforcement. Be careful. Non-contingent reinforcement is a planned strategy. It uses a schedule. It's an antecedent strategy where we're delivering reinforcement on a schedule regardless of behavior. Not what occurred here, right? It was still a consequence strategy. It was just bootleg. And then D, none of the above. Well, what happened was you provided bootleg reinforcement to the toddler. When somebody earns reinforcement without having to actually engage in the response required for reinforcement, we call that bootleg reinforcement. You're tasked with buying the wine for dinner with all of your friends. They send you a long list of different wines. Once at the wine store, what is the most important skill for buying the right wine? All right, so pretty simple question here. Our task is to buy the right wine. What do we need to do to get the right wine at the wine store? Because they gave you a long list of different wines. What are you going to have to successfully do? What's the most important skill? A, functionally communicating with the employees. Can you go to the store and buy what you need without functionally communicating with the employees? Absolutely. You have the list. All you need to be able to do is identify the right wines. What about differentiation? Well, you don't need to engage in a bunch of different novel responses in a response class, right? There doesn't have to be a new response class. You simply need to go to the store and buy the items. So the behavior might just be grabbing the wine and putting it in the basket. What's important, though, is to get the right wine, you need to discriminate between the different wines. The discrimination of stimuli needs to occur here. You have a long list of different wines. You go to the wine store, and you're going to have to look at all these different wines and pick out the ones on the list. That's going to require strong stimulus discrimination. And then tacting. Well, you're not going to be verbally labeling these wines, right? D is very similar to A. Now, could you possibly need help? Maybe. That's not the most important skill for buying these wines because you're going to have to discriminate from that list to start with, and you're going to have to go to the store and discriminate the different wines in the store. So once at the wine store, the most important skill for buying the right wine is discrimination or stimulus discrimination. You need to discriminate between all the different wine bottles and pick the right ones on the list. After careful consideration, Dean and Jerry agreed that each of their interventions would be effective at increasing a client's ability to ask to use the bathroom. If Dean and Jerry wanted to ultimately pick one intervention over the other, what strategies could they use? We're looking at Dean and Jerry trying to decide between different interventions. Now, of course, when we're looking at interventions, we want to first start with, well, what's going to be effective, right? We want effective interventions. And so Dean and Jerry agree that their interventions would all be effective. So we've narrowed it down to, well, they're all effective. So if we're in that situation, it's a good thing, right? We have multiple options. So what do we do next? What strategies do we use next to say, okay, we have different interventions. They'd all be effective at getting the client to ask to use the bathroom. Now what? A, ask the client what intervention the client would like to use. Absolutely. Getting the client involved. It shows them respect. It gives them dignity. It follows the ethical code. A, great strategy. B, pick the intervention that has the most empirical support. Of course, if you have one intervention that is backed by years of research versus another intervention with minimal research, then picking the one with more research would be a good strategy. C, conduct an ecological assessment and choose the intervention based on the results. What does that mean? Well, C means we would go and assess the environment. And then based on the environment, we pick the intervention that fits best in the environment. That's a fantastic idea. What strategies could they use? Well, they could use all of these. They could ask the client what intervention they'd like to use because all the interventions are going to be effective. They could B, pick the intervention that has the most empirical support, so whatever's backed by research. Or C, go in, conduct an environmental assessment, and choose the intervention based on those results. Larry's neighbors tend to play loud music late into the night. Larry has trouble sleeping because of the loud music and would like his neighbors to stop playing the music so loud after 10 p.m., especially on weekdays. How might Larry use a differential reinforcement of other behavior strategy in this situation? All right, so we have a situation where Larry wants to use a DRO, or a differential reinforcement of other behaviors. And with the DRO, when do we reinforce? We reinforce in the absence of a behavior, when a behavior is not occurring. The DRO does not teach a replacement. And so that's how you should start differential reinforcement questions. When am I delivering reinforcement, and am I teaching a replacement? DROs, we're not teaching a replacement. What Larry is focused on is his neighbor playing this loud music. And so if he's going to use a DRO, well, he's going to reinforce when the neighbor's not playing the music loud. So let's look at A. Have a discussion with the neighbor and offer to cut their grass if they only play classical music after 10 p.m. Well, this is teaching an alternative or a replacement behavior. It's not a DRO because they're still playing music. A is out. B, bring the neighbor a homemade pie each time the neighbor plays loud music for 3 or less nights during the week. Well, this is more of maybe a lower rates differential reinforcement procedure, right? He's set this goal of 3 or less nights during the week. If his neighbor hits it, well, then he gets reinforced with pie. With the DRO, we don't want the behavior at all. So C, thank the neighbor each morning if no loud music was played the night before. That's the best answer if we're looking to use a DRO, where we are reinforcing in the absence of the behavior, which is playing the music. So if the neighbor does not play music, then we're going to go over and thank the neighbor each morning no music was played. Thank you for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.